This is an iPhone 13, or at least something that previously resembled it. It has definitely seen better days. We're going to start by unscrewing the bottom screws and then go ahead with heating the phone to 100 degrees before beginning to pry up the screen. While prying on the screen, you need to be very careful, especially at the bottom, to avoid getting lines across the screen. In our case, we intend to refurbish the original screen so that we don't get the non-genuine screen replacement message. And of course, we want to keep the phone as original as possible. Upon opening it, I can't believe how dirty this is. It appears that the battery has gotten pregnant, breaking the seal and pushing up the screen. This has allowed so much dirt to get inside. Removing the 3 metal plates gives us access to all of the flex cables. Disconnecting 2 flex cables allows the camera to pop right out. 2 more cables and the screen is free, putting it aside for refurbishing later. Now we only have 11 more to disconnect. Once all the flex cables are disconnected, we have 4 screws to remove to free the motherboard from the housing. Gently pushing the flex cables aside and lifting the motherboard with our tweezers, freeing it up and sliding it out. 1 screw and the speaker and Face ID are free to come out. Next, we're moving on to the bottom section of the phone, removing more screws. It's time to remove the haptic sensor and SIM reader, not forgetting to eject the SIM tray before taking out the SIM reader. We're not trying to make this phone worse. 6 screws and a metal plate later, we can remove the bottom speaker. 6 more screws and we can get onto the dirty pregnant battery. We feed the battery with 99% isopropyl alcohol. This softens the adhesive and makes it easy to remove. As we can see, this battery is definitely pregnant. We won't throw it as we will need it later. Moving back to the top section of the phone, there's some screws that we need to remove before we remove the antennas. Firstly, we remove the Wi-Fi antenna and then gently prying under the GPS antenna until it's free. Moving back down to the bottom part of the phone, we remove the SIM pin. Don't lose this as it's vital to eject the SIM tray. Then using a pry tool and isopropyl alcohol, we can remove the charging port that we unscrewed earlier. The previous owner of this phone must have had a pet with the amount of hair that's gotten inside this, and who knows what else. And trust me, it takes a lot of work to get this out because of the waterproof sealing around the charging port, and the microphones is extremely fragile, so we have to be extra careful. We are almost done with disassembly. There's a few metal plates that hold the screen in place. These must be removed. We unscrew them and set them aside for later, as our new housing does not come with any small parts. Not forgetting about the wireless charging pad and volume sleep wake buttons that are all connected using 1 flex cable. This is a very fragile component of the phone, so it is easy to break. We are taking extra care whilst removing this. We're now removing the Bluetooth antenna, which is also connected to the rear microphone. This is held in place by a few screws. Once removed, we can pry it using our jimmy tool. The flash flex is held in place with a plate with awkward angled screws. Pressing gently on the flash from the back helps remove this with ease. One of the most tricky parts when doing a housing replacement is pulling out the brackets that hold the side buttons in place. As you will see, one of the side brackets decided to fly away. Jokes aside, it is very easy to lose them. We finished disassembling and the new owner has chosen a pink housing. Now we'll start to transfer all the parts, one step closer to having this phone back to its former glory. Firstly, we add the magnets from the old housing, which we removed off camera. Put in place using transparent cold pressed glue. These are tiny and easy to lose, so be careful. Next, we install the side buttons, securing them with previously seen brackets. This is harder than it seems. The metal plates were then attached to the sides to ensure that the screen stays in place. We also added the wireless charging pad. Pay extra attention to the mute switch, as it's tricky to position correctly. After securing everything, we tested the side buttons for proper functionality. We don't want to disassemble and reassemble this phone. Each component received a quick clean to remove all of the dirt. The charging port was easily fitted with 8 screws to prevent any movement. Followed by reinserting the speaker and metal panel. The SIM pin and reader were carefully placed, allowing the SIM tray to slide in smoothly. Installing the top antennas and flash requires precision, especially with the awkward panel that needs to be screwed to accommodate the camera. Additional awkward screws were necessary for grounding the device. We continue with the microphone dust cover, rear microphone and Bluetooth antenna, securing them with a cover to keep the microphone in place. The Face ID and earpiece were simply installed with a single screw. Gently moving the flex cable allowed us to slide the motherboard back into the new housing, secured by 4 screws. We like to use tape to remove the film that protects the camera glass to prevent any scratching or marks. After reconnecting all the flex cables and ensuring they're properly connected, we add the camera, giving it a quick clean to restore its appearance. As we mentioned earlier, we need to keep the old battery. Don't worry, we won't be putting this back into the phone. We will only reuse the bottom board as the serial number is synced to the motherboard. This is an anti-repair tactic by Apple to prevent smaller repair guys like ourselves in carrying out repairs. We start by cutting the 2 metal connectors at the bottom of the battery with ceramic scissors. We use these to prevent shorting the battery and damaging the board. We then use a stencil to put the board in place, lining up a special high quality battery with the board connectors. We then use a spot welding tool to put these connections in place. As you can see, these aren't going anywhere. Folding the board carefully so that we don't damage the connections. We then put a plastic cover over the bottom, holding it in place with a sticker. It's now time to add, as a fellow YouTuber calls, the forbidden cheese. These are not the original iPhone 13 strips, but they will do just as good of a job holding the battery in place. Remove the protective film and boom. Slap it into place by connecting the flex into the motherboard, pushing it down firmly to ensure it won't go anywhere. Done with the battery, let's move on to the last part and make this phone as good as new again. We start by cleaning the well cared for screen. As we mentioned earlier, we like to keep this phone as original as possible, so we've decided to refurbish the damaged screen. This is a very delicate process and is not always successful, as Apple makes their screens very thin and easy to damage during this process. The first step is to remove the sensors attached to the screen. This is always easier with heat. We set the machine to 100 degrees so that it can soften the glue called OCA, which connects the glass and OLED together. We then proceed using a very thin wire that enters in between the damaged glass and the OLED. Gentle movements pulling side to side, slicing until the OLED is fully separated from the glass. And here it is. This was a perfect separation. This is what the OLED looks like after detaching the glass, and here is the destroyed glass. We add some isopropyl alcohol to the screen to soften the OCA. Turn it around and leave it for a few minutes until it's heated and ready for cleaning process. We use a machine that the name is unknown to me, but it looks like a big stick and spins and collects all the OCA. Adding more alcohol, and trust me, there's no shortage of this in Ireland. We use a sponge and cloth to finish up the cleaning. Now it's time to put it in a mould and give it one last wipe before we add the new glass. We leave it under a green light to ensure there is no dust before we apply the glass. We place it into a machine called a laminator. What the machine does is pressurizes the inside and presses the glass onto the OLED by applying heat and pressure to remove bubbles between them. Think of it as a complex way of installing a screen protector. And here it is. The screen is like the day it came out of the factory, or at least the front of it. Back to the housing. Before placing the screen back onto the phone, we need to add a water and dust protective seal. Unfortunately, we didn't have one, so we had to adjust a seal from another model iPhone to fit the housing. Once adjusted properly and pressed into place, we can remove the protective film and move onto the final stage of our assembly. We add the sensor back onto the screen and secure it with a metal plate and 3 metal screws. Not forgetting about the earpiece mesh. Finally, we connect the screen, ensuring the battery is also connected. The last thing before we close the phone is to secure the flex cables with panels. A few more screws and we're almost there. Quickly wiping the panels we just installed and we're good to close the phone. Gently pressing the screen down, ensuring it's properly sealed. And there you have it, folks, the transformation of a once destroyed iPhone into a device that looks and functions as if it just came out of the box. We've navigated through the intricate process of disassembly, swapped out the old for the new, and reassembled every component, ensuring everything is in place perfectly. If you made it this far into the video, thanks so much for watching. For more content like this, please like and subscribe. Thank you.